I was quite nervous, to be fair. Obviously when you look at the news it looked quite bad, and then the fact that we've been called up quite at short notice, it runs through your mind like what is actually going on. And then obviously you've got the fear factor. I didn't know what was going to go on at all. I wondered what it was going to be like, what the country was going to smell like, because obviously people who've been there before have always said it doesn't smell that nice. What am I going to see? Am I going to really come back from this? Loads of different thoughts going through my head when I was on the flight going to Kabul.
You land, the back of the plane drops down, you get off. What were you faced with? What was the first thing you saw?
Walking along the runway, first thing you heard was gunshots straight away from the Turkish, I believe it was. And then all you see, then you get to the end of the runway, and you've got like loads of Americans, you see loads of MRAP vehicles, and then you see barbed wire, and there's just in between the barbed wire, you'll have like a barbed wire in a square, and you'll just have loads of the civilians, the population just in there waiting to get on the flights. But at the time we didn't know what that was. And you're just seeing soldiers going around everywhere, weapons, everything. Everybody, it looked like it wasn't organised at all. And when we were walking through, all you could hear was constant gunshots at that time. So a lot of us, if you looked around at people's faces, we were all quite shocked to say, because we didn't know what was happening at all. We didn't know if it was Taliban or if it was coalition forces firing their rounds off. So it was quite a fear factor when we got there. And obviously it was dark at night, so nobody knew what was going on.
You're faced with that, and it is like a sort of tableau of every sort of human emotion in front of you. But you have to focus on your job. How do you go about sorting yourself out and getting on with it?
And the Sergeant Major come over, and I think you sort of like a pep talk when you're having it. That sort of sorts you out for it. So he'll talk to you, say when you find out that maybe your chain of command are nervous as well, it doesn't seem as bad to you, and you feel like I'm going to be all right here. And I think that after we'd had sort of a pep talk and you'd sort of talked some of the rank, and you found that when we found out a bit more about what was going on, that's how we sort of got through it.
And then you wake up in the morning. Things always seem better in the morning,
yeah.
And you got to get on with it. What was your job? Tell me.
What I went on to was something called Guardian Angel. So when we brought people in to get processed, or before they got processed, they'd sit in an area and you'd sort of like give them food or water if they wanted food or water, or if the children were there, the children would probably look at you and probably sometimes would put piling rocks on your hand, because they didn't know what to do really, or you just talk to people. So obviously I talked to quite a lot of the people that was there, had a conversation, the ones who could speak quite good English, or if they had any questions, you'd answer the questions, pretty much provide protection for them.
These people are clearly desperate, and they've seen goodness knows what, and all sorts of things that you can only imagine any worst nightmares. How do you, as a soldier, make it a bit better for them?
So you've got to always reassure them. So when there was gunfire going off on a night, or even throughout the day sometimes, some of them were quite jumpy because they didn't realise what it was. You had to reassure them all the time, pretty much, and make sure that there was food there and there was water there for them, and that you reassured them. And when they asked you a question, say when am I next going, you had to reassure them that it was going to be soon, and that they was going to get on that flight, because a lot of them were very scared.
How did you feel watching all this happen in front of you?
Quite sad, to be fair. Quite sad. It's a different bit of life that you don't see. So I've never seen that before. I've never seen people jumping over fences because they're that desperate to get away. And it's things like that, like just seeing children as well. So like there was children who had been injured as well, and children were scared, and children who didn't really know what was going on. And it's quite sad to say that when you get brought up in a completely different country, you get brought up different, and then you think of how these children have come into this world, and that's the first thing they're seeing.
The initial call came on a Sunday, and then during the week we're kind of getting ready, doing the pre-deployment checks here, etc. And then on the Thursday, the day we were meant to be going on leave, actually, we deployed from here, from Episkopi Airport. We deployed into Kabul Airport.
What was the scene like when the ramp went down on the back of the aeroplane and you're in Kabul Airport?
So it's really busy, and kind of a lot of people there have been to Kabul Airport only a year before, including myself. So kind of leaving, the state that the airport was in when we left last year to what we arrived to was drastically different. And we went straight into it. So kind of had an initial brief, got our ammunition, etc. And then one of the platoons was sent straight on task, and the soldiers stepped straight into it kind of immediately. It was actually kind of real credit to themselves. Everyone just kind of took on the task straight away.
What was the tasking that was given to the people on the ground?
So we had, we were essentially responsible for moving EPs and ARAPs from the Barons Hotel all the way around to the flight line, essentially. So we had a platoon, the White Rose taxis. That was one platoon. They were moving the EPs and ARAPs from Barons Hotel around to processing centre, where another platoon was then responsible for kind of helping Border Force and Foreign Office personnel essentially process those people and then get ready for the flight. And then we took them onto the aircraft, and obviously they went away from there.
Many levels of risk there, particularly the platoon going from the hotel through the gate into the airport. You're in the operations room. How are you managing that risk?
So obviously we were kind of split up, as company headquarters. We had myself, the OC, and the Sergeant Major. And we put a lot of trust in the platoon commanders and platoon sergeants, and the corporals as well, and they really stepped up to the mark. And it's kind of a model we've always worked off, is a lot of trust in our kind of our leaders, and that kind of paid dividends. But we had myself, the Sergeant Major, etc. And the OC, everyone kind of cutting around when they could, minimum rest, but getting around and seeing everyone, making sure they're okay. But luckily we've got a lot of experience in those platoons.
What was it like when you went out to see what your team were up to, the situation on the ground, and how did it strike you looking at people, desperate people, and how do you assess how they've changed from your previous time spending time in Kabul?
Yeah, so it was difficult seeing that, and it's kind of it's a different. It's not really what we trained for. It's difficult to train for an environment like that. It's something we've never really done. But I think the kind of big thing was just showing compassion, and it was difficult out there because obviously there's a lot of risks, a lot of upset people, and for us it was mainly about getting hold of these people, giving them basic stuff like shade, giving them food and water. And we found that once you did that and you kind of reassured them that they're going to fly away from the airport that night, they calmed down a lot, and that definitely made the job easier. And kind of the friendly nature of the soldiers really helped, and you can see a marked difference from those in the crowd outside the airport to those EPs and ARAPs kind of going through the process throughout the day. So it was difficult, but the soldiers kind of took it in their stride, and as I said, it was about compassion. That really helped the situation.
You're doing a great job getting people that are entitled onto the aeroplane, but of course there are so many who aren't entitled and can't come and will be there now. How do you cope with that in your mind?
That was really difficult, and I think it was really difficult for the parents within our group, kind of seeing people getting turned away. I suppose we have to frame it in kind of a legal framework. Not everyone can get on, and it's only right that only the people who are legally allowed to go on, those are the only people we could let on, and that decision didn't lie with us. So I suppose that made it a bit easier. But it was a tough decision, and it's one of those things that you kind of just have to get through it. And we always traded it off, think of the people that you did get through, and the kind of the numbers. And I think it was around 12,000 people we moved during our time there in HKIA. So that kind of definitely helped kind of process what happened.
And just finally, as has happened so many times, and we're hearing anecdotal stories of people meeting people they know, and that happened to you. Tell me.
Yeah, so one of the few chances I actually got to get out of the ops room, I was just walking around one of the processing centres with the platoons, with the Sergeant Major, and then bumped into, so he was the first lieutenant in the ANA, and he was at Sandhurst with myself, so 3 years ago now we left, and happened to spot him out of a crowd, so obviously went over to see him, and then happened to be media there, so we managed to get a photo together, and planning to see him as well when I go back to the UK. So just check on how he's doing and what his future plans are, etc.